Okay, today we are taking a look at the artwork of JonFawkes. This is an artist on DeviantArt who is known for drawing human versions of ponies. While a lot of people do that, I find this particular art to be of extra special high quality, and they also match up with my own previous works, the use of Sims 2 and Sims 3 characters to turn ponies into humans. Anyhow, like I said, the main reason to look at this is because it highly resembles what I was going for when I created my Sim Equestria series. Well, I have recently gotten the Sims game to work again. I may or may not be diving back into Sims Equestria for Season 7, and this is the artist I want to use in place of that. Mostly because Sims are highly disobedient and don't do what you want them to do, and they take a lot of time to build their houses and set them up and so forth. Plus, it was a huge drain on the Google Drive's memory capacity, which is where the Sims files were being stored. I can probably still play the game now, but I would have to keep things a lot smaller than what I do for the Sims Equestria series. But moving on to the review, it seems that starting with Season 5 and moving on up to Season 6, he's been recording at least one scene from each of the episodes and translating them into how that same scene would look if the characters were human. So let's look at some of these pictures. Here we have a scene from the Season 5 premiere two-parter. There's Starlight Glimmer about ready to take the cutie marks of the main six with that staff of Seamus that she had. These are always interesting interpretations, and they're always going to have the same criticisms. Great lighting and great shadows. I love the expressions on each of these different characters, and they seem to capture that moment from the episode and translate it pretty much perfectly. So I'll mostly be showing off some of my favorites with just a few highlights to put each one above the other. In this particular one, in addition to loving the lighting and shadow and expressions, I find it interesting that Starlight Glimmer has these chains around her to sort of represent that whole leadership of the equalist village kind of motif. It seems like that probably would be what the human version would be going on about. You also see a hint of these like pointy ears and so forth that make each of these characters feel like they're not fully, completely human, and there's still something otherworldly about them. Kind of elf-like we're still in a fantasy world full of magic and stuff. But I do love how each of these scenes is basically iconic enough to be instantly recognizable with what episode it goes with. So that's the other thing that really works in these sorts of situations. Then we get into part 2, is where Twilight is defending party favor Double Diamond, Night Glider, and the other one from Starlight Glimmer's attack. I love the winter attire on these characters and the subtle little details like Twilight's cutie mark. Not exactly sure if Night Glider's outfit says Night Glider per se, but the other ones look pretty cool. And as always, I love the lighting and shadow effects and the facial expressions. They seem to capture that moment perfectly. And there's extra nice little details on Twilight's shield. Next we have Fluttershy and Distord from Make New Friends But Keep Distord. And again, it's another great emotional moment. I can almost hear the characters talking in this sequence. And we get Pinkie Pie, Rainbow Dash, and Dilda from the time that they visited Dilda in Griffinstone. Dilda probably isn't how I'd imagine her if I'd seen her coming off of Griffin the Brush Off, but this is how I would imagine her after seeing Lost Treasure of Griffinstone. That sort of peasant sort of look she's got going on definitely fits in with what we came to know about Griffinstone later on. And we even see other details like Rainbow Dash having a bandaged leg and having these little heel-placed wing thingies to give her her flight ability. As opposed to giving her wings on her back, she has them on her hands and feet, so that therefore a broken wing can become a broken leg. And it gives her less of a pony feel and more of a otherworldly, magical human feel to it. And again, I love the details in the background as well. And then there were several good choices for Slice of Life. I chose this particular one just because of it just edged out slightly better than the rest. I think Octavia and Vinyl have much better expressions and better encapture what Slice of Life was in comparison to some of his other works. I love the expression on Vinyl. That in particular seems to jump out at me. Though the what's going on with Octavia also seems to work quite a bit. This one I really love from the Yakistan episode with Pinkie Pie and those yaks. This is exactly what I think those yaks would look like if they were humans. It captures that quite perfectly. I love the regal details on the prints, the expression on Pinkie Pie. I love the beard and the crazy hair. This really does look like a humanized yak. Even the Viking horn helmet on the top here looks exactly like the yak's horns. I think this is exactly why they chose the yaks to be in this episode, because they wanted to capture that whole Viking vibe that Vikings would have given off. The princess's dream of magic sheep, with Luna and the Tantabus looking at each other while inside that dream world. And I love the extra detail on Luna's bubble. This is something the show never gave, and it tends to look a lot more like the magic bubble that Starlight Glimmer used when she traveled through time. It has a very intricate series of sort of steampunk style magic wheel things. A little bit like a Final Fantasy perhaps, or something like that. It's a lot of extra work and detail, as opposed to just drawing a bubble around Luna and putting some like shimmer and stars on it. And the star filter inside the Tantabus looks nice too. I suppose it could have been done real easy like with a paint tube tool or something like that, but it could have just as easily been done one star at a time. Hard to say exactly what made that particular effect. And we got Ra-Ra singing her heart out on her piano as she sings her song after discovering who she was meant to be. It's not a lot to the background this time, but it has some nice solar flares going on. And like always, I love the expressions, lighting, and shadow, and it still looks like a screenshot taken from an anime and not an art piece. But a detail that I really love in this particular situation is the way that the lyric she just finished singing is faded out, and the lyric she's singing now is the one that is filled in. It really does contribute to that whole idea of, if this was an animation, half of the lyrics would have faded out in movement and the other lyric would have faded in, also in movement. Now we move on to next season with Spite and Princess Ember hugging after Ember received the scepter from Spite. Again, I love the expressions on both of these. The background seems to be a bit more simplified compared to what I've been seeing in the past, but there really wasn't a lot to draw in that cave anyhow. And we continue to stick with normal, traditional skin tones too, as opposed to giving them colored skin tones, which would have made them look like Equestria girls or made them look like my Sims characters. But still, this is exactly what one of my Sims would have looked like if had I been trying to make a human version of Spike or Ember. And we get Trixie and Starlight Glimmer in this lovely little relationship bonding moment where they're hugging and kind of snuggling noses. Then the background's kept very simple, not a whole lot of detail to it like we saw in the past couple of examples. This is probably a nice little time saver to push these artworks out on time and on schedule, instead of spending more time doing all sorts of details and so forth. It's still all of the same compliments that I've given in the past, as well as just capturing that perfect moment from that particular episode. We have a completely different style from the usual, and this is Rarity being sneezed on by Toto, who's sick with the cold. There's some Japanese characters in there, and they're in a chibi form, and both of those things just reinforce the idea of this being a very anime-inspired art style. I find this cute, too, even though it lacks the light and shadows and amazing background. This is more like what would fit into a manga or comic strip. Now we get into the stranger than fan fiction pictures. This one of Rainbow Dash and Cribble Pants as Rainbow Dash looks at the Daring Do body pillows. You know, it seems a lot more inappropriate when the character is human on a body pillow than when the character is a pony on a body pillow. But at least we have the decency of seeing the character clothed. I love the expression on Rainbow Dash's face, as well as Cribble Pants' little smirk. And there's some nice details of a second body pillow being in the background, and whatever's going on with these purple curvy and straight lines. This other picture of Rainbow Dash and Daring Do is oh so great. We captured the smirk Rainbow Dash had in that moment perfectly, and I like the choice of clothing for Rainbow Dash too. It seems like what Rainbow Dash would wear, and her build seems to match the type of build I imagine a human Rainbow Dash would have. Since she is an athletic character, this is, of course, in keeping with who she is. Quite a bit more than what Equestria Girls gives her to work with.